Good morning, everyone. It is 9:30 at One Market in San Francisco. Kate Rooney, my friend and colleague, joins me. She's in San Francisco, another location. And welcome, Alex Bouaziz, co-founder and CEO of Deel. It's great to have you. You're coming to us from Tel Aviv this morning.
Right. Exactly. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you for staying up late. Now, I'm going to do something unconventional. I'm going to have Kate explain what Deel does because she's a reporter. She's written about you guys, followed it, and I know she can do it in sort of a nice, succinct way.
Love it. Well, I know Deirdre, as a Canadian, knows this issue better than anybody, but I've covered a little bit of Deel's funding. I think the easiest way to think about it is they do the software behind the scenes of hiring someone remotely, but specifically overseas. So if you want to hire somebody, you're a tech company, you're trying to hire somebody in Sao Paulo, for example. The taxes, the payroll, some of the regulations are completely different than what you'd have to do in the US. Deel does the software behind the scenes. So you sort of plug that in, hire someone remotely, and they handle some of the difficult stuff behind the scenes.
And clearly a good business, right? Just valued at what, over $5 billion, Alex?
Correct. 5.5. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So tell us what the journey's been. Why did you see this need? What has the response been like? I know you're working with some very big companies.
Yeah, I mean, we've been very lucky on that front, and I think I'm going to get Kate to pitch the company for me in the future.
There you go.
She does a much better job. But in general, I think my personal background is I'm pretty international. I grew up in Paris. I moved around in quite a few different countries, and I've really had the chance to see that there's talent everywhere and that opportunity isn't distributed. So for me, it was always a thing, right? I knew that my amazing friends from around the world were eventually going to work for the best companies, and some of them couldn't figure out that US relocation, so companies wanted to work with them.
Kate, another company that you and I have covered and do cover is Brex. And Enrique, the co-founder, he has such an interesting story. Remember, he met his co-founder. They were gaming. His co-founder was in this like small rural town in Brazil, and they were gaming. They started talking to each other, and Enrique eventually said, "I'm going to start this company. Will you come?" They didn't have to be in the same place. We talked so much, Kate, about this shift to remote work, particularly in tech. So Deel is really fulfilling this need and this trend that we've seen just kind of exploded over the last year and a half amid the pandemic.
It's so interesting. Some of the companies we should mention that Deel works with, Coinbase, Shopify, some of the fastest growing companies. I'd be interested, Alex, to get your sense of sort of who's hiring the quickest. That it tends to be sort of a leading indicator of some of the growth and what sector is taking off. What are you seeing on the hiring side? Is it crypto, for example? I mean, that's such a global industry.
For sure. I mean, Brex is a Deel customer actually, and Enrique is a close friend. So I think in general, the tech industry has realized that talent is everywhere, and the pool of talent in the Bay Area or in New York is becoming pretty thin, and it's becoming very competitive. So opening yourself into hiring globally is important. So I'd say tech companies for sure, crypto companies for sure, and I mean we're seeing that pull for every industry. It's just a matter of time before they have to adopt the motion for sure.
The salaries, we looked at sort of the average salary. I don't know off the top of my head, I mean, the Bay Area in particular in New York. One of the factors we talk a lot about is inflation or deflation in the camp of Cathie Wood. I don't know if you follow her research at all, but she's sort of made the argument that some of these technologies and factors like remote work could add to deflation and could be a deflationary pressure. What do you think about wages if companies have the ability to hire anywhere where engineers might cost half of what they would cost here in the Bay Area?
Well, I think it's great. First, you're distributing wealth, so giving opportunities to people that don't have it. And I mean, I'm not sure, but some of my friends in the Bay Area, and I love them for it, but they used to switch job every year from a Facebook to a Google to a Twitter and getting a 20% increase on their job because of the leverage. So I think software engineers should get paid really well, but I think a bit of arbitrage where talent comes into place is important.
That's so interesting. I know we were talking this morning about how sort of the shift over the last year and a half has really put the power back in the workers' hands. But what you're doing is sort of putting it back in the employers' hands, as you say, making it less easy for, employees of Apple, Google. We know them well, Kate and I, switch every year.
It depends how you look at it, because we've definitely seen some amazing engineers in Brazil, for example, as you mentioned, have, they've got the power back on their side as well. So it might shift a little bit of the power of the Bay Area overpaid and maybe overspoiled workers in some cases to some of the engineers that don't have the usual opportunities. But I mean, the marketplace is getting fierce on the remote side as well.
What are you seeing as far as, I know you mentioned some of the areas and hubs that we might not think of as sort of engineering and tech hubs. I know Nigeria is big for fintech. Certain places in South America. It'd be interesting to get your take on kind of where you see as emerging hiring hubs or tech hubs.
Yeah, I mean, Nigeria has been really big, as you said. I think Stripe investing quite a bit in Nigeria has been a show of that. South America is great, as you mentioned. Brazil there's some unbelievable talent. Some of the people on our team just there are amazing. And I mean, one of the hidden gems is definitely Eastern Europe, countries like Ukraine and Russia. It's just so much talent there. It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm thinking like UiPath, right? That comes out of Eastern Europe, and
Sure.
the CEO there has talked a lot about talent. Alex, what happens when people? Right now, it's all about remote work, but if companies eventually want to move some really good people into the United States, I ask selfishly because Kate referred to this. I'm a Canadian working in the US, and the taxes, the visa situation, it's never ending. It is such a headache. Do you have the capability to do that, to bring workers into the US?
Yeah, we can definitely help. I think what we've seen is there's going to need to be some trade-offs, right? I think the US, if they want to keep being able to, it used to be called, at least in France, we used to call that the brain drain, where all of the biggest brains of the country wanted to go to the US to work for the best companies in the world, myself included. We really, the US will have to figure out a way to either, make it a little easier, the same way France does it with their entrepreneur visa, or some workers might actually want to stay in their home country as well. Canada is not
first brain drain.
What about companies redomiciling? Are you seeing that if you don't have to hire people in the US? We've seen companies like FTX move from Hong Kong, for example, to the Bahamas. Is this enabling companies to operate outside of the US?
It is, definitely. I mean, maybe another angle to that is European companies or APAC companies wanting to get into the US as a first market, right? Hiring their first people to start getting into that market for sure. I think, look, FTX's move is quite interesting. I think it's a bit more tied to what's going on from a tax perspective. So hopefully the US government can find ways to attract the best companies and make sure that they can stay.
One more for me, Alex. I spoke to the CEO of C3.ai. This was actually months ago. And his philosophy is if you don't want to be in the office, we don't want to hire you. He wants everyone back all the time. And he says that they have so many applications now that's fine. They're not losing out on any kind of talent war. What do you think in the long run? Do you think that companies who want everyone in person, particularly tech companies, can win in this environment where talent is shifting and it's becoming easier to hire overseas?
I think there's two things to it. The first one is flexibility of workers is going to be very important. I mean, I wouldn't work at a company that forces me to be at an office every day, just because the fact that I can pick is a big part of my decision. And the second is when you do that, you limit yourself on the talent pool. The only way for you to start hiring in Brazil is going to have to be open an office in Brazil. And that might not be the most efficient way to do things. So I think in the long run, I'm willing to bet they'll change their policy on this for sure.
We're going to come back to you and see if we'll come back to you like a year from now, see what the thinking is.
Actually, and Alex, when we talked a couple of weeks ago, we talked about outsourcing, and you sort of pushed back on the idea that this is outsourcing. How is this any different than the traditional idea of just looking for workers overseas and trying to pay people less?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the factor I think that helped Deel grow as a company. Where a couple of years back, when you were pitching to venture capitalists, you didn't used to tell them, "Oh, my team is in the Ukraine" or "My team is in Brazil." You used to say. You used to actually hide it until someone said, "Oh, you're outsourcing your tech in the Ukraine? Is that what's happening?" Where today, I mean, the mindset has completely changed, right? People think the best talent, they're my teammates. I want to give them a great employee experience. And this is actually where Deel comes in, right? Giving a great employee experience to those teammates, even though they're abroad. So that has been it's been a huge shift in the mindset of people for sure.
That's very true. I'm going to wrap it up here. But Alex, it was so great talking to you. And Kate, great to have you along. We have to do more of these.
Yeah, these are great.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, thanks, guys. We'll talk to you again soon, Alex.
Bye-bye.
Have a good evening in Tel Aviv. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.